Okay, so whoa. Okay, now we're recording. I think
Whoa, what
just
happened?
started
I
recording.
lost your
Okay, there
video.
we go. Look at that. All right,
Oh no, you're back. Oh, hello. Hello.
I'm there. Okay, cool. All right, hello and welcome, my friends. If you are watching this intro, this means that you are watching our first live YouTube podcast. We're still going to be doing just the regular podcast, doing like a regular recording. However, this part exclusively, this little opening here, is going to be exclusive for YouTube. Yeah, we'll do a little dance for it and
Opening.
everything.
An
Um,
opening shimmy.
so before we actually get started, one, I do want to thank you all so much for hanging out with us so much, especially on the EU or EU review, which is what we're doing today. Um, you guys have just been great over the last 2 years following the podcast. We have had a lot of people ask if we were going to start putting our podcast on YouTube, and
Oh, we have?
we
Cool.
have actually. And
Oh, hell
here's
yeah.
before even we had people asking about it.
She fought with a lightsaber was Darth Maul.
She watches this. I hope that she was waiting with bated breath for me to actually say this was Jenny's idea first. I'm going to clarify that for everyone. This was Jenny's idea first. Okay,
A majority of our good ideas usually come from Jenny. It's
they really
just
do.
just kind of how our group works.
They really do. And I honestly, for the longest time, kept thinking, "Oh man, that's gonna take forever to edit, and then to put it on YouTube plus Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything." But I was being silly. And the thing is, it's not really gonna take as much editing as I probably think, unless we have like some kind of connectivity issues. So here we are. It's going to be us on YouTube going forward. You'll be able to find the podcast here as well if that's the way you prefer to listen to them.
I was really hyped because I was just like, oh,
We're not moving from that. However, if you see this and there's another podcast platform that you want to see us on, please let us know. I got to be honest. I thought Spotify and Apple Podcasts were going to be pretty much all I needed to do. Next thing I know, I've got people telling me YouTube is where they prefer to listen. So, you know, yeah,
that's
here we
really
go.
interesting. I wouldn't have thought that.
I some people refer as some. I've even had some people say they prefer to watch podcast, and I'm like, even if it's like a static image, because I've seen a lot of people, Weekly Planet slash Caravan of Garbage, whatever you want to call them, um, they put their podcast on YouTube as well, but
Hmm.
they typically have like a static image and just kind of let it play out. But a lot of people just prefer it that way. So whatever. Hey,
Interesting.
we
Yeah,
we are a group for the people. So
yeah, that's true. It's whatever works. If you want us to do this on YouTube, if you want us to to post our podcast videos to Pornhub. It's whatever the people want and need. So we're here for you.
is that okay? No, I'm not going to put them on there. Al can do whatever he wants.
I'll
Um,
post them to Pornhub. I'll create a Pornhub account and post them to Pornhub.
just for the fandom
Yeah,
correspondence.
and list them under like under like two hairy men get excited about Star Wars.
this Thank God we're not monetized yet because this is already going off the rails. Um, always count on Al to do that for us.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I can't remember what I was going to say next. Now, damn it! This is your fault.
I mean, we have to update our tags now on Instagram and, and YouTube.
Do we? Do we? No, we
Yeah.
don't. We will leave that on the side. If it'll be a treasure hunt for people at that point.
Yeah. Ooh, we should make that a tag. two, two sweaty boys go on treasure hunt for truth. But anyway, this
Anyway,
has got far.
he's
Just to remind everybody, this was Ginny's idea.
that part was not Jenny's idea. Let's just clarify that right now. That part was not Jenny's idea. Um, but seriously though, the bottom line, I was even about to ask, like, Al, do you want to add anything for the exclusive YouTube intro? No, not anymore.
There you
That's
go. Those are my additions.
he's,
You count on me to contribute.
In all seriousness, though, once again, thank you all so much. If you are, whether you are commenting on Instagram post, commenting here on this YouTube video, following us on Twitch, and commenting on streams, anything, even if you're just listening to a podcast, even if you don't talk to us about it, if you're just listening to it for a little bit, any kind of support that you all have offered to the fan correspondence over particularly the last 2 years, but really just in the entirety of the 8 years that we have been doing this, which is weird to think of. Um, Thank you all so much. We really cannot thank you all enough. And yeah, really good. Finally be here doing more on YouTube. Um, that was the next thing I was going to say. There will be some days where it will just be probably a static image of us, whether it's just our logo or whatever, a picture of what we're talking about, because there are some days that you're just like, I do not feel like being seen by the world. I'm a little gremlin and I just want to talk about fandom and not be seen talking about fandom. um, there are days where I'm like that. There are days where I'm assuming Al is like that, and everyone
Yeah,
has those days. But today,
everybody got those days.
everybody's got those days.
Everybody got those days. But I will say, hey, y'all, if you want to head on over to patreon.com/fandom correspondence,
Mm,
if we hit, I'll say 25 patrons on Patreon, Jacob and Josh will develop VTuber avatars, and they can be the images for the for the YouTube
is
videos. So
that's
there
what
you go.
we're doing?
That's what we're doing. I'm putting it out there now. I'm I'm manifesting this. Because that is two things I want to see: both the increased Patreon support and you and Josh's VTuber.
Okay, so now I'm curious. What if it's Alyssa and Jenny doing the podcast? Is it still mine and Josh's avatars?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Jacob. What a stupid question you asked me.
Okay. What if we have multiple people talking? Are we just going to just we're gonna double up on one of the avatars?
Yes, we're just gonna split them up so that so that it'll still be your and Josh's avatars, but for the people who aren't you and Josh, the avatars will be slightly smaller.
Sure. Okay. Yes. Tell me what. Yes. 25 subscribers on Patreon, even if it's just $1 a subscriber.
Even
Yes.
if it's a dollar.
Even if it's just $1. Me and
Honestly,
Josh will
especially if
do
it's a dollar.
say
I said, honestly, especially if it's a dollar.
yeah, exactly. Especially if it's just $1 for your subscription. Um, me and Josh will become VTubing avatars.
Woo!
You might never see our faces again. It'll be like the fandom version of Daft Punk, but in a
Yeah.
very, very odd version of it.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I can't
uh,
wait.
once again, thank you all so much. We're gonna go ahead and get started on the actual podcast. Um, And yeah, Al, if you want to go ahead and just do a little countdown, and we'll get going like we normally do.
Yeah, sure thing. All right, I'm excited for y'all. Y'all get to see how the sausage is made. It's really
Mm.
be fun. All righty. Hello, everybody. The other one when we get in little tiny sized episode of the Star Wars EU or E review special here on Fandom Talk with the Fandom Correspondence. As always, I am Al, one of the co-hosts of the Star Wars EU or E review, where we talk all things old canon and new canon Star Wars, every form of um, visual or whatever kind of EDM you want us to talk about. And joining me, as always, is the head honcho, the grand poobah, the spiciest salsa of the fandom correspondence. We have Jacob Vance Hardesty as my constant co-host. Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I am really just so ready to talk about this series because this was pretty awesome, if I'm being completely
Yeah,
honest.
this was a blast. This was a good little kind of surprise treat we got. If you haven't seen the title of the episode yet, then he was like too excited about a new Star Wars EU or EU review podcast, and just hit play before you read it. This episode, we're doing an extra episode, so y'all are still getting your regularly scheduled Star Wars content from us. But we wanted to do an extra special episode because Tales of the Jedi came out
Hmm.
towards the end of October this past year. Um, 6 episodes, 6 relatively short episodes. So easy to do in one sitting. That's what I did. I just kind of sat my butt down on my couch the other day and watched them all. Um, 6 short episodes about two main Jedi in particular, I would say, or rather, I guess two. Both of them are former Jedi.
Mm.
Now that I'm thinking about it, there are 3 episodes focusing on Ahsoka Tano, and 3 episodes focusing on Count Dooku as well. So it's kind of split up that way. So we'll be covering those today because, as Jacob already said, this little care package of episodes was a delight. It kind of scratches that Clone Wars itch until the new season of Bad Batch comes out. Kind of holds us over until we get more Mandalorian stuff, and like it's not quite as like sad and heavy as Andor has been. So it was
Sure.
it was a good little break for Star Wars.
Mm.
But yeah, so we'll just get right into it. If we're a little bit like zany today, a little bit more than usual at least, is because this is the first time we're doing one of these with like our video cameras on because we're putting this on YouTube. So if you want the visual aspect, head on over to our Fandom Correspondence YouTube page. I get the added excitement of of seeing Jacob's very beautiful face as we talk about these very beautiful episodes. It's fantastic. He's posing now. He's
Hmm.
basically Fabio. He's wonderful. But we'll get right into it. Um, Jacob, I've got some stuff prepared, but as far as the structure goes today, I'm going to turn it towards you. Would you like to talk about the Ahsoka episodes or the Count Dooku ones first?
Mm. Well, I do. We'll probably start with Ahsoka, honestly.
Okay.
um, but first, before we open, I do want to talk to you about this because I don't know if you knew this, Al. This show had a little bit of controversy to it whenever it was first announced. Um,
I'm I'm not surprised.
sure, yes.
Everything
Well,
that describes everything that comes out.
yeah, exactly. Just yes, Jacob. It's Star Wars.
I
Um,
I heard controversy about like the new season of Sesame Street the other day, so I'm not surprised.
well, the interesting one with this is so if you are unaware, whenever Disney acquired the Star Wars licensing in 2012, one of the first things they did was they said basically anything that was not films and or Star Wars Clone Wars by Dave Filoni is no longer canon. Okay, so now we're building all the new stuff. So if you were unaware, if you ever hear us talk about old canon versus new canon, basically anything pre 20, I would say 13, 14, because there were some books that were still released that were still technically part of old canon. They're called the Legends. And then anything released after that is all part of the official new canon. What's interesting is there are two books part of the new canon. One is Dooku Jedi Lost by Kevin Scott, and Ahsoka, just one word, by E.K. Johnston, that supposedly this show negates certain things that happen in those two books. One, I will admit I have not read either book. And I'm sure they're fantastic because I love Kevin Scott. Everything he has done with the High Republic stuff has been fantastic. Um,
That's great.
and E.K. Johnston is just a delight to follow on Instagram and TikTok. So she's great. Um, but
Inquisitive.
we're like, oh, now all the new canon lovers know how we felt years ago. All their stuff's getting rewritten, and it's like that. One, that's not really how I feel. Two, I feel like the Ahsoka stuff definitely, I do not think really negates anything that happens in the book. I once again have not read the book, so I could be wrong, but I cannot see anything that happens in this show negating what would happen in the tales between basically the end of Clone Wars and Rebels. Is
Yeah.
supposedly what it's basically how she becomes Fulcrum. Spoiler alert for anyone who has not seen the end of season one of Rebels. Whoa. Um,
Uh, I don't know what
but
that was, but
that was just an owl noise. There you
that's
go.
just, yeah,
Um,
that was just me.
but with with Dooku, I could see a bit more. Once again, having not read the book, I'm not sure exactly how in depth it goes with his characterization. I could see where certain aspects of this might change certain things because I know it's a lot different. Really, it isn't though. See, and that's why I'm kind of intrigued. I really want to read those two books. Like, I hope that we cover them for the EU review in the future, um, because everything that happens in this show still works alongside everything that happens in the Darth Plagueis book, which is kind of yeah, no, bringing up some old stuff there. Um, Still falls in line with everything that's been written about his character already. It just kind of showcases it, for us to actually see kind of how it happened. So I did want to address that because there were a lot of people who did, which I saw so many posts of the now they know how we feel, and it's like that's not
Oh my god.
like I just I don't think here's
Oh,
even if
oh,
it
what
did.
victims.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like even if it does, one, Kevin Scott, I cannot see ever being upset with anything that happens within the Star Wars world around his workings because, and forgive me, I don't mean to try and speak for them, but everything he has done in High Republic has been so good, and I'm sure Dooku Jedi Lost is also really good, but I can't see him being upset if Dave Filoni of all people, one of the basic heads of Star Wars pretty much over the last
Mhm.
10 to 15 years, if he's making a new show that happens to, create maybe a few plot holes or something, I can't see him being that upset. Same with E.K. Johnston. They both seem way too laid back, to actually be upset about this if it even happens. It's another reason I do. It's an added reason I wanted to read these books anyway. I wanted to read these books anyways, but it's an added reason for me to want to read them more now to see if it actually does affect that. Um, but yeah, we will start with the Ahsoka episodes.
So okay, sure.
The structure was kind of weird to me because you have the prologue episode, and then you do the three Dooku's, and then you do the last two Ahsokas, and that was kind of
Yes.
weird to me. Um,
Hmm.
so much so that at first I thought they were going to do Ahsoka, Dooku, Ahsoka, Dooku. Um,
Right.
they didn't, but I mean, it's
They
still
did not.
they did not. Um, then there's also a part of me I'm wondering were they trying to go chronological, but
Hmm.
but then how old
I
is
don't
this?
know.
Because I don't
I
think
was
that
about
was
to.
set up that
I was about to
well.
say I don't know how old Ahsoka is supposed to be there.
Because because the better question is how old is Dooku and Qui-Gon supposed to be?
That
Because they
that's a
are
very good question.
because they are both a lot younger in that first episode.
Yeah.
But we will talk about that here in just a little bit. We'll start with the Ahsoka episodes. I loved them. I thought they were both really cool. The first episode, I there was one thing that annoyed me. Okay, they
Okay.
canonize one of my favorite Star Wars creatures. Okay, they canonize the Kaibuck.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
So for those of you who do not know, the Kaibuck is from the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars. It's what Yoda rides not only in the opening of the very first episode, but also during the Battle of Coruscant. Okay. In fact, I'll tell you what, for our YouTube people, hang
Oh
on.
boy. Oh
Oh boy.
boy. I'm scared. Oh, he's gone. He's gone, everybody. Well, I guess I'm doing the show.
Yoda on
Oh
Kaibuck.
my god.
Check us out on YouTube to see it happening.
Wow, you've heard of Elf on a Shelf, everybody.
So now there's Yoda on Kaibuck. Just it's an action figure, by the way, for anyone who's listening on Spotify. It wasn't a like
Yeah, good visual thing for an audio-based medium. It's fine.
I should have just lied. It's been like I just brought out my marble statue of Yoda on the Kaiba. I've been working on this for years. Um, it's the Kaiba's one of my favorite creatures, just because it's such a cool thing to see in the original Clone Wars. So I was like, okay, sweet, there's a Kaibuck. First thing we get is like this
Uh-oh.
scene where the Togruta tribes are hunters. Okay, so they're kind of a hunter
Mhm.
gatherer kind of society still,
Sure.
and So the first thing, of course, we have to see is we have to see, Ahsoka's mother talking about the value of basically the circle of life speech, pretty much, and how we this will feed many families, and everything like that. So it's kind of rough to watch because, and I even messaged the group and I was like, well, Jenny can't watch this
Yeah.
because Jenny is if there's animal deaths just in general, Jenny's pretty much done. And there's rare occasions where she will still watch something if that happens. Um, but yeah, but I like the first episode because then we have this like scene where like the Force is inherently strong with Ahsoka, which I really like that actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, man. That first episode is pretty solid. I enjoyed it for what it was. Um, I love the imagery. I always love the imagery of just like a a small dude, a small person who's riding just like an insanely large animal of some sort. So like with her like riding up on the back of like essentially a giant like saber toothed
mm,
tiger at the end of the episode was great for me. Um, and I just enjoyed that. And Qui-Gon, it kind of reminded me of kind of like a reflection or almost like a foreshadowing of kind of the Force journey that we see Ezra go through in
mm,
Rebels as well, because there are
yeah,
several instances where like he shows kind of like a natural affinity for like having a connection to animals and to parts of nature. So I thought that was really cool. I don't know how intentional that was, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was really intentional. Um, yeah, man, you talked earlier about like the structure of the episodes, how we get like an episode of Ahsoka, then the entire 3 episode arc of Dooku, and then the last 2 episodes of Ahsoka. And I thought it was kind of weird at first, but after finishing the show, I thought the structure of that was like kind of genius in a way because you at the end of the day, without getting too into like the details of each story that's being told, because we'll get into that here in a bit. But you have this structure showing that in a lot of wall being like Dooku are experiencing very similar kind of um, stories and phases of their life as far as their
sure,
relationship with the Force, their relationship with the Jedi, and what their identity really means within those institutions. And so, like you get this very like fun, overall like warm, except of course with like the death of the Kaibuck, which is unfortunate. But
oh,
you get this uh, this overall pretty optimistic and kind of like bright um, a beginning of this series with the first Ahsoka episode, where Dooku and Palpatine shows her potential, and she like makes peace with the giant tiger boy, and it's great. And everybody is just like, "Ooh, Ahsoka, yay!" Um, and then like it drops a little bit, and it goes through the Dooku episodes, and I think the show is kind of like expecting you to know a thing or two about the journey that Ahsoka has in general in the Clone Wars and even in a little bit into Rebels, because I mean you get the story of Dooku, and it's just like slowly a story of how he's disillusioned
mm,
with the Jedi and the Jedi Council, and like and reflecting that. So I thought it was really cool how they kind of used the structure of the episodes to kind of show two very similar journeys with two very different outcomes. Because of course we know Dooku eventually falls to the dark side, whereas Ahsoka um, fights to stop the dark side, but in kind of her own way and kind of her own understanding of the Force. And so I thought that was very cool. Kind of how they were able to show that parallel and also the difference with how they told these stories. I thought was interesting. But But yeah, so we get the first one. We get really just like the infantile origin story that Ahsoka has, and then we get to episode 5. We're skipping around a bit to kind
Mm,
of do the character arcs entirely. So we skip on down to episode 5 with Ahsoka, um, and I really enjoyed this episode.
yeah.
Uh, it probably has to do with like how I'm like a nostalgia target for anything that has to do with Clone Wars, but except for Attack of the Clones, and I just really enjoyed the premise of the episode where like Ahsoka like feels kind of frustrated with her training because she kind of feels like she's doing the same thing. Anakin like knows that like these typical trainings aren't really helping Ahsoka learn or grow or test her potential in any way. So it's just yeah, there's just a lot to the story of this episode because you have Anakin going and talking to Rex. So Rex shows up and like the rest of his group shows up and so you have Anakin saying, "Hey, clones, like attack Ahsoka, so that she can learn how to deal with more intelligent, more creative um, attackers, because that'll be really good as far as refining her senses and having her rely more on the Force entirely and stuff like that." And like the the dramatic irony there in that episode because like oh
Yeah.
we know that Ahsoka's like really gonna have to get used to fighting clones, don't we? um, is just like really cool and really well done. And like but like even though like we know what we know, it doesn't come off as like heavy handed or like
Mhm,
it doesn't feel like it's really insisting on itself. It's
mhm,
just it comes off as like, yeah, this is a pretty reasonable thing you would expect Anakin to do if Ahsoka's really excelling against everything else. Let's like throw a new challenge her way. And so it still feels like a reasonable thing that would come out of that kind of context while still kind of having the nudge of just being like, this is going to be pretty useful, don't you think? But yeah. How did you enjoy episode 5? Was it a good
5, yeah, 5. Off screen, like, so I when the show was first announced, alright, they said because it was just kind of a surprise, and then I didn't know it was coming out this soon. I thought this was a post Bad Batch thing.
yeah,
Uh,
it was like it was, it was very much like a Nintendo Direct
yeah.
kind of thing where it was just like here's a new Fire Emblem game and you can play it in 8 hours and just like
Ah! Um, but what's interesting is that when it was first shown at Star Wars Celebration, they didn't even have they had concept art. They didn't even have any of the animation. I don't know if they were just waiting to do a trailer or something. So that's why I was like, oh, well, this is gonna be a while because we just saw the Bad Batch trailer, so I figured we'd get that first. But
yeah.
the thing that they had announced is here because Dooku and a focus on two main Jedi in Count Dooku and Ahsoka. And I remember thinking, all right, cool, more Dooku backstory. I'm ready for that. And I remember thinking, foolishly, mind you, do we really need more Ahsoka? All right.
Mm. Sure,
And
sure, yeah,
as someone who loves the character, okay, we've seen her in Mandalorian. She shows up in Book of Boba Fett. She's gonna get her own show next year. So I was like, do we really need to focus on another aspect of Ahsoka, especially during the Clone Wars, where we've seen her so much? Both of these episodes changed my mind entirely.
mm,
First episode's okay, don't get me wrong, but episodes 5 and 6 changed my mind entirely about that, and I'm like, yeah, this was necessary. And I think you're absolutely correct that this is something that they are expecting. Like, you've seen Clone Wars, you've seen Rebels, you know what this is,
we
like,
get
um,
it.
especially with episode 5 because Filoni and crew are 100% using the show don't tell method. 100%. Because by all reference, I mean, like you just said, you described the entire episode in basically a minute and a half. Okay, and that was going in depth about what happens, and that's honestly fair. It
Mm.
there not a whole lot happens, but it's a lot of subtext. Paying attention to the three time jumps that happen in this episode, which I don't know if a lot of people notice that. Um, but the one of the first things I noticed, and one of the first things that a lot of people notice in the trailer because they do show it, the move that she is using when she is figuring out how to learn how to fight against the clones is the exact same move that saves her in the Siege of Mandalore. It's the exact same motion. And so no, and you're absolutely right. Like there's no way that's not intentional. Like there's no way that it's like that they weren't just like, oh, let's like Rex says, let's hope that training pays off. Like
Yeah.
that's all of that is so it adds so much to the actual like backstory of the character, um, particularly her relationship with Anakin, because I like that when we first see Anakin in this, which shout out to the episode 2 hair designers for Obi-Wan and Anakin. I love that we got both of those in right at the start. Um, Anakin is basically annoyed with her. He's like, I don't want to have a Padawan. I didn't really want this in the first place. And like you said, he's like, this is not working for her. She's not really learning anything. But because Anakin is who he is, he's like, well, I'm gonna have to train her the set basically the way that I would train someone, like not going by a Jedi way, really. Honestly, definitely kind of going outside the confines of like what the traditional Jedi Order would want to or have her train. Um, but by sticking her with the clones and like you said, dealing with people
Pretty fast.
not going to think the same way droids are, it eventually saves her life. But I like that Anakin knows that he needs that, not even in just the sense of I want to save her life, but also in the sense go
So you
ahead.
could have.
Like if he's not being challenged, he's not actually learning anything. And I don't know, it just works really really well for their relationship. It adds so much more to if you watch this and then immediately watch Siege of Mandalore, like it's gonna be whoo, that's gonna be a rough watch. That's gonna be that's gonna be a tearjerker or two. Or if you watch the Jedi Who Knew Too Much, or that the arc where she leaves the Order, um, it's just I was really impressed with the fact that without being heavy handed, without being like this is another Ahsoka story, it's gonna go on forever, or anything like that. We get to see the building blocks of their relationship and the building blocks of this is adding to who Ahsoka is as a character. Um, and then of course, and it leads perfectly into episode 6 really well. Um, Also, even when I was like, oh, do we need another Ahsoka episode? Even then, I was like, oh, good, we're getting more Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka because Ashley Eckstein is a delight to say the very least. If you're
She
not
is.
following her on Instagram or looking up anything that he does with Our Universe, which is a fantastic clothing line, all based around like Star Wars and nerdy stuff. It's wonderful. She is one of the best, and she just, yeah, I'll go ahead and say it. She should be playing her in live action. I love Rosario Dawson. Nothing against her, but Ashley Eckstein should have been asked. But whatever. That's a conversation for another time. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
but
a whole podcast right there if we want to get into what kind of jobs voice actors deserve. But
um,
but
but
here,
it's great to have her back. It's great to have Matt Lanter back as Anakin.
sure.
And it was also great to see a little Dapa Balaba and little baby Caleb Doom uh,
Yeah.
cameo. the future Kanan
Yeah.
Jarrus, ladies and
Little
gentlemen.
young little
Yeah,
young Kanan. I love
little,
him.
little Kanan.
I was
Yeah,
really, yeah. Yeah. I was exactly the same way where they like showed him a couple times. And I was just like, little baby Kanan. Like it's just exciting.
he's
Um yeah, it'll little hot tip, little comic books suggestion for anybody out there. If you're interested in reading a really good Star Wars comic that isn't about like the usual characters we're exposed to, the Kanan comics, I found were really enjoyable.
Yeah.
You get to learn a lot more about his training with the Jedi and his relationship with his master. And so those are a lot of fun.
They also have some rough moments though, so
They do.
just
They
a,
do.
just
So
a
be
heads
ready.
up.
So be ready.
It's a for
Yeah. No, you
but it's really good. Yeah.
but yeah, so yeah, that brings us to episode 6, the last episode. Um the last one with Ahsoka, which, as you said, kind of serves as a bridge between what happened um, at the end of Clone Wars and then what happens by the end of season 1 of Star Wars Rebels.
Mm.
It kind of serves as a bridging thing to kind of explain what happened to Ahsoka and how she got into the rebellion and stuff like that. Um, and like I thought this episode was good. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed episode 5, but like
Sure.
I thought it was good. I thought it was cool. I thought it accomplished what it had set out to accomplish. Um, we need we need to talk about the most wild thing that came out of that episode, which is who the hell that Inquisitor was. Jacob, you have anything to add on that point? Because that guy was pretty cool.
So
That guy was
so
pretty dope.
here's the thing. When it first happened, like so they showed him in the trailer, and I was like, that guy looks awesome. Okay.
Yeah, looks
And then
so
he
cool.
gets wrecked by
Yeah,
a
he gets
Ahsoka.
aced. Yeah.
I with at first I was like, oh man, they wasted him. And then I was like, okay, but that was also pretty awesome. That Ahsoka without even a lightsaber is just like, nope, gonna I'm gonna take your weapon from you and then take you down, you know? Um I although I that's kind of the problem with the Inquisitors is that every single one of them has a cool design. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
Even like the which one's the one that dies in the season finale of episode season 2 of Rebels? Is it the fifth brother? The one that
Oh yeah.
like but he's also the first one to show us the helicopter blades basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's ultimately what kills him.
Yeah.
Uh, but like even like his design is really cool. I like that the ninth sister from Jedi Fallen Order is I can't remember what species that is, but it's like one of the newer ones from the sequel trilogy where they're like these like big like brutish kind of
Mhm.
uh I'd be okay with that. I'd be
Oh
okay.
yeah.
I liked her design. I thought she was really cool. And then you learn more things about her in the Darth Vader comics. She's really cool in that.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of the thing about the Inquisitors is every time they show up, they're going to be interesting because every single one of them is a fallen Jedi, basically. Like to the best
Mm.
of my knowledge, I don't think any of them. I'm pretty sure they are all either
As far
fallen.
as we know. Yeah.
Yes, we know. we know the Grand Inquisitor was. We know Riva was. We know Trilla was.
Yeah.
I mean, all of them that we know of are
Yeah.
that. So yeah. So the guy with like the creepy Reaper mask in in this episode,
Pretty cool.
uh, presumably he was a former Jedi as well. But you're right. We don't learn anything about him, and I was a little upset about that. I kind of wish that they had just shown like I kind of wish that they had done something differently. They had brought in Riva or something like that, and just
Mm.
she gets away instead or something like
Yeah.
that. Um, because I do want to know more about that guy, obviously. Um, but it's whatever. But I did like one thing I really liked about this episode because I you talked about how you were basically you were a sucker for any kind of Clone Wars nostalgia.
Mm.
Um, for some reason, Bail Organa is one of my favorite side characters in any Star Wars, any
He's
piece of
pretty
Star
cool.
Wars. Or I just love him as a character.
He's a cool dude.
I so seeing him and basically him, talking to the stormtroopers, but also talking to Ahsoka at the same time. I really enjoyed that. I also like that he did get a little kind of heavy-handed at the end, and so both the clone troopers were just like, "What was he talking about?" Or like, "Just call me if you need anything." What, what? Why would we call you? you know?
Okay.
Okay. um, but yeah, I liked seeing him. I thought that Ahsoka showing up to Padme's funeral was a nice touch.
Mhm.
Uh, Once again, Ashley Eckstein, fantastic voice actor, knows the role so well. She does more with the line "She was my friend" than a lot of people can do with an entire like film.
Mhm.
Um, she it's just a really good performance by her. I really like that. Yeah, and then but you're right. This acts so well as a bridge because I like that he didn't need a like three, someone died, or so. I like that he didn't have to have that to
Yeah.
join back up in the rebel cause. I like that whenever he is done with getting away with Rex at the end of Clone Wars, he's just like, I just want to be done. I want to go find whatever kind of life I can. But then immediately following that, she's like, I can't leave this fight because this fight is it's who I am. It's in me, and I don't know. I really like that aspect of it. I thought it was, because as far as we know, like we don't know how much time has passed, but like my head canon is like this was like a week later. Like an inquisitor shows up, and then she's just like, well, I guess I'm back in it now.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. We don't know how long it's been. That's a really good point. Um, yeah,
Probably weekend to rest, basically.
but yeah, 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 those are some good observations about the episode. I also enjoyed that like she had made a point to go to Padme's funeral,
Yeah,
uh, even though it was obviously like a very dangerous thing for her to do.
sure.
Um, I liked that. I also enjoyed the line that you brought up where she goes and meets up with Rex um, for the rest of the episode before the time skip, essentially, and like she's just kind of like I'm tired of fighting, and um, like it really reveals that like yeah like all of the Jedi, like obviously, those who survived, like the Purge, like all of them had like lost a lot and stuff. But like it really reinforces the idea that like, you know, the, there's a big difference between Ahsoka's reaction to the Purge and um and the one Jedi who happens to be hiding out on Tatooine in like the first episode of
Oh yeah,
Kenobi,
yeah,
where where he's just like, no, we have to group up and we have to figure something out, and like we gotta fight and take down these stormtroopers and stuff. And both Ahsoka and Obi-Wan in their own like respective shows that they're in, both have like a very similar response, which is just like, I'm tired, man, and we lost.
yeah,
Like that's just where it's at. And like the missing factor there, like the factor that those two share, is that like they lost so much more because of Anakin.
sure,
And like I don't think Ahsoka knew at that time for sure, but I feel like especially in the Rebels show, it's very much hinted that she had an idea, um, that she had a sense that like Anakin's fate wasn't the same as everybody else's. At least that's kind of the reading I got from that show.
mm,
And so like the fact that like they both are just kind of have like that exhausted kind of take on things and are just like, nah, man, we lost. Like I'm tired. Like I'm gonna go and do something else. Um, and then the transition to like her face off with the Inquisitor, which is awesome. Like it's it's so cool because the Inquisitor just like looks like a total badass, like the coolest design of the Inquisitors we've seen. And like it's really cool. And like in hindsight, I'm the same way. I'm kind of glad it went down the way it did because one, a lot of the new canon expanded universe stuff has been pretty good at keeping differences in power pretty consistent
Mhm.
with things. And so by the end of the Clone Wars, especially by the end of season 7 of the Clone Wars, it's pretty well established that Ahsoka is
Because these fandoms are not just for us.
swordsman.
Oh
Like
yeah.
she like she's really good at what she does.
Oh yeah.
And so we don't really get to know a lot about this Inquisitor, but I also appreciate that um of course she would be able to handle that style of lightsaber combat too, considering the last person she fought with a lightsaber was Darth Maul.
Sure.
So
Sure. Yeah.
that's the freshest example of lightsaber combat in her head anyway. So that's so I thought that was really cool. Again, I don't know if that was super intentional, but it felt like that a bit to me. Um, but yeah, I do hope we eventually learn a little bit more about that guy. I hope he shows up in a comic or something because that'd be cool because he was a really cool dude. But yeah, yeah. I really enjoyed Ahsoka's story in this show. But now the other Jedi character
Hmm.
who has some time in this show, Count Dooku. I was really excited when I first heard about this show when I heard that hey, one of the people is going to focus on Dooku because as somebody who um, still at this point hasn't read a whole lot of stuff about his character.
Hmm.
Um, so I really only know stuff about him from the show and the films, essentially. His book is on my list, but I was really hyped because I was just like, oh, cool, we get to learn about this dude. We get to learn what was going on with just that whole clone stuff. What's going on with that? Wow, wow! I could have easily been talking about a Spider-Man comic. Crazy, uh, but yeah, and it was just very cool. We get to see a Qui-Gon Jinn
Hmm.
again at a much earlier time in his training in life. So yeah, I'll turn it over to you, Jacob, because I know you like the character of Dooku. I know you like the character of Qui Gon Jinn.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
I will hand it over to you as far as how did you enjoy the Dooku stuff?
So this was some of my favorite stuff that they've done in the new canon. Honestly, all these three episodes were fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, for so many reasons. This year specifically, it's funny that this happens at the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones. Okay, follow me. Stay with me.
Sure.
Um, prequels, obviously, like I'm not going to inundate you with the prequels have these many problems, but I like this. There are two massive things that the prequels fail at that we have discussed before, and that is the fact that one, with Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship, you see them apart more than you see them together in the films.
Mm,
And with the entirety of the character of Count Dooku being just basically a man of mystery, but a man of mystery who is essential to the plot.
mhm,
Okay. Um, both the Obi-Wan Kenobi show and Tales of the Jedi, I won't say they fixed the problems, but they at least tried to address them and add more to them.
mm,
Um, obviously, Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm not going to talk too much about that, but obviously it helped out quite a bit with the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin. With this, we get three episodes that explain, in my opinion, everything about why Count Dooku leaves the Jedi Order, why it's not so much of a cut and dry of, I'm immediately a dark side user now, which I really, really loved, but
mm,
more of a I am trying to see if there's another option out there to help the galaxy as a whole. Now, granted, that option for some reason is Darth Sidious, but what we all make
mm.
mistakes. Maybe not his best choice, but um,
Who among
But
us does not have an ex we're not proud of?
but um, but focusing on this first episode, I mean, of course, the very first shot, I love that the animators were like, how can we do a young version of Count Dooku and how can we do a young version of Qui-Gon Jinn? And they were, and I my assumption is that they were basically just like, have you ever seen Horror of Dracula and also Rob Roy? Because that's basically what we get. Is we get both we get animated versions of Christopher Lee and Liam Neeson in their most famous or in some of their most famous roles when they were younger. Um, because the entire time during that first episode, I was like, "This is like where is Peter Cushing as Van Helsing just going to come out of nowhere, like at any moment?" Um,
and and who would have thought that that was Yaddle?
just out of nowhere. Um, but no, I really like this first episode. It most of the supplemental material, whether it's in the different shows or the books, when it comes to talking about the Jedi Order as a whole and the Galactic Senate really failing at this part of the history of Star Wars and the history of the galaxy, um, is something that I have grown to enjoy more the older I've gotten. Uh, that might be because it's a bit more prescient now, but that's another conversation for another
Oh,
time.
yeah.
But
Escapism. What does that mean?
um, but I really liked, we see Qui Gon and Dooku come in as keepers of the peace. That we see them being what Jedi are supposed to be, um, and basically Dooku sees everything that's happening to this village, and he sees that basically everything that's happened to this village is because this governor, I think, senator,
It
governor.
was a senator, yeah.
Okay, this senator is just being a complete ass and is not
Using
helping out his
words.
people at all and is focusing entirely on the things that are going on in either A, the Galactic Senate, and or B, his apparent presumably we don't see it, but presumably gigantic mansion, while everyone else is just living in squalor, pretty much. And I there was a part of me that I do have to admit, I just enjoyed the fact that like once Dooku has enough, he's just like Force Coke. Just here we go. Just like immediately. I don't know. I really liked that it was a. I like that he was doing something that was technically wrong because yes, it is wrong to choke and attempt to murder people. Um, but at the same time, he was doing it with the mindset of this man has ruined most of these people's lives. There are so many people who have been affected by it. Um, he's failed them, and he doesn't deserve what he currently has. Which is in this case life. So um, I don't know. I really like that aspect of it, where it's more of a almost more of an anti-hero kind of decision as opposed to a strictly villainous decision.
Right.
Uh, and then of course I love the fact that like Qui Gon is quick on his feet. He's like, I can't stop him, but maybe, just maybe, if he sees this guy's son literally stand right in front of him, he won't like kill them both with a lightsaber. Maybe let's just see what happens. um, so yeah, I don't know. I really liked that first episode. I thought it was really good. Um, Showed a really good showcase of both of those characters. Wonderful to hear Corey Burton back as Dooku. Thought that was great. Um, I recently learned, literally an hour or so ago, Qui Gon in this episode is voiced by Liam Neeson's son. Um, and
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, Michael Richardson, I think is his name, because Miranda Richardson was his mother.
Cool.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, isn't that that is fun? I like
yeah,
that.
it's cool.
I
Yeah,
like that little factoid. That's good stuff. Um, nice. Yeah. 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 It's a good episode. as we he said before, if I hadn't known that Dave Filoni had been in charge of this project, um, I would have known. I would have caught on pretty fast because there's a lot of like scenes and like just themes throughout this show that feel very similar to other things that Filoni's done. And one of those things is like I got very much the same vibes from the scene where Dooku begins to horse choke the senator, as I did in like um, the episodes of Clone Wars where Anakin uses a force choke.
Yeah,
That like it just felt it felt like very familiar and stuff, where it's just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, I get what you're doing. Like, I see that.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was a good episode. It's one of those things where like it sets the stage, like it definitely plants the seeds for like what Dooku ultimately does and becomes,
Mm,
and it does so in a way that like I think very much um, re- resonates with a lot of viewers, um, because like I've said this before about Anakin, about Ahsoka, and like I'll say it again now with Count Dooku in this story, that like one of the main things that I think a modern day audience for Star Wars, especially those like um, in our age group and below. One of the main things that they can relate to is having a institution or a idea that they believed in, that as they got older they gradually became disillusioned by.
sure.
And like I think
It's
that's
thrown here.
yeah, I think that's clear that that is what they've gone for in the past with these characters, and like it's clear that that's what they're going for now. Is that Dooku is slowly realizing uh, that the Jedi are not what he thought they were, and
Mm,
that the function they serve is not as upright and not as effective as it should be. And so I thought this was a really good way to kind of introduce that as kind of the seeds for like why he turns. And again, to like highlight like these similarities between him and Ahsoka uh, as well, because she undergoes a very similar kind of journey and realization about the Jedi. Um, and like we kind of follow her through a similar story there. But yeah, I think it's done well. I think it works the best as the first piece of three, as far
mm,
as these episodes go, because it sets the stage for a lot of stuff. Um, Especially for the third episode for Tuku, so that'll be episode 4 of the
cool.
show. But first, let's go in order though. We have what I would imagine. I don't know. Has Josh watched this?
Not yet.
No. Okay.
Not yet, to the best of my
So
knowledge.
let's go to episode 3 of Tales of the Jedi, which I would assume would be the episode that Josh probably enjoys the most because it heavily features Mace Windu being an asshole and being a hypocrite. So this episode, I liked this episode. Um, but like I will be real, I couldn't watch a single scene without thinking about Josh. Because Josh would just be like, "Yeah, makes perfect sense that he was the one who pushed Dooku over the edge." Of course, it was Mace Windu. So like we get, I will say as far as the pacing of these episodes go, this one felt paced kind of weird to me because
Sure.
I feel like it was a pretty um in-depth investigation that was set up here, because the whole idea is that like I'm a Jedi master who was on this planet who was working as like basically like a protector as well as like a consultant.
Mhm.
Um, that's like the vibes I got off of it. who had gone to this planet, had died. And so Dooku and Mace Windu are going to this planet to collect her body, and Dooku wants to do a lot more. He wants to investigate. He wants to figure out what's going on. And Mace Windu is very much like, we must obey the words of the council. Um, and Dooku is just like, well, I mean, a person died. I want to like see what's going on. Uh, I want to see why that happened. Like she was my friend, and so they go, and it feels like, and like I know these episodes are short, but one of two complaints I have about this show, this season of this project, and I'll get into the other one when we get in to episode 4.
Mm.
But the first issue I have is that this investigation feels like a whirlwind. It feels
Yeah,
like it
I
it, it
was.
starts and is over like as soon as it starts.
Mm.
Like because it feels like they show up, they ask like two questions, and immediately Count Dooku is just like, "I know what happened." And you're just like, "Whoa!"
Which I like that he's like that, but at the same time, you're not wrong. From a pacing standpoint, it's like, oh, okay.
It's wild. But
Mm.
yeah, overall I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. But that was kind of like if I'm gonna pick on things I thought were like weird or not handled like quite as well as everything else, that would be one. But how did you like episode 3?
Well, so if I can nitpick one, you might be able to help me on something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't remember why she was killed. Like yeah. Well, mention like why the guards killed her because I can't remember.
So um, I think it came down to they wanted to confront the senator who she was with, and so they wanted to take her like out of the equation because like they assumed
Gotcha.
she would not side with them, and so
Sure.
yeah.
Which is why they kill him so quickly. Okay, gotcha. That makes more sense. Yeah, because they were because it was honestly like that's the one problem I had with this episode was I don't know why I must have missed why they were there. I don't know if I was zoning out or something. Like I caught everything else between Dooku and Mace, but it was that aspect was
Yep.
I was missing. Um, but if I remember correctly, it was something similar. Like I don't think he was like that bad of a person, but it was something similar to the issues that they were having in the first episode,
Yeah, yeah,
where
like
these guys wanted something different.
yeah,
Um,
like he was like the issue at hand was that like this senator was like a corrupt dude who was like he was like skimming the taxes from that planet or
okay,
something like that to like fund himself or something along those lines. Yeah, he
sure.
was doing like weird corrupt stuff, and they wanted to stop him. Yeah.
I got you. Um, yeah, that was the only issue I had with this one, but I did kind of like that. Whereas we have that as like the side kind of piece where we are still focusing on how the Galactic Senate is failing, but with Mace and everything else that's surrounding this, Dooku is seeing how the Jedi Council just in general is also failing.
Mhm.
Because there's even a point where he says something to the effect of like, do you believe what they're saying? Do you think that the Jedi are puppets of the Senate? And Mace says something to the effect of like, I believe the Jedi trust the will of the Force, and it's like, and you know that like there's a part of like Duke is just wants to be like, that's not what I asked you.
Yeah, that doesn't answer my question, Mace.
That does not answer what I asked, which is making me concerned. But once again, I like that as we open, we get to see basically the last remnants of friendship that Mace and Dooku have.
Mhm.
Um, because there is that standoff in episode 2 that does kind of call back to them having been former friends, you know. And so I like that we get to see them in basically the last moments that they were friends, and because I'm assuming that is not that was an awkward ride back to Coruscant. I could be wrong.
Yeah, probably.
because of course, basically what happens is, Mace is trying to uh, effectively gaslight him the entire time, and
Yeah.
is like, yeah, no, we don't need to worry about this. We just need to just grab her body. We'll get on back. Sound good? And Dooku's like,
There's no
no,
Warren Bossing say.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no more bossing say. But of course the kicker is we learn that, like, which I like that this happens like while they're still on the planet, or they might get back to Coruscant when it happens. I can't quite remember. Um, but he was a council member, and
Yes, yeah.
after she is killed, we learn that Mace is the one who takes her spot.
Mhm.
And Dooku, I think he once again, I think Dooku asked him, like, "Did you know when we were going to collect her body that you were already a council member?" And I can't remember what he says, but something to the effect of like, "Trust the will of the Force," and it's like that also didn't answer my question, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, it's even like, I don't know. In my opinion, it's even worse than that because he says something like, we both received this mission and we both had the same orders, and like I chose to obey them and you didn't. And so it was very much an answer of just like, all right, I'm excited for y'all. Y'all like, I'm not going to tell you if I knew beforehand, but like I knew to like I knew what I had to do in order to like be in the place I was and stuff.
mhm,
Like, yeah, it was that kind of like smug, like,
mhm,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
Which like I said, it's one of the reasons that this time period has become more interesting to me the older I've gotten, um, because more people have supplemental material, any kind of material that's written after the fact of the overarching films or whatever you
Mhm.
want to call it, whether it's Star Wars, Marvel, DC, whatever, anything that is a shared universe, when it's building on to what has come before is always so interesting to me. And I'm gonna level with you. I don't know if George Lucas actually had the intentions of showing the Jedi as incapable.
Mhm.
I don't know if it was that or if it was just he didn't know how to write them well,
Mhm.
but people have run with it and it has worked so well in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um, because we see now, even in the High Republic, era, not trying to spoil too much, but like we see moments where there are characters who are like, I have to follow orders to a T, and a lot of times it does not go well for that character. But then you contrast that with a character who's like, I can't follow those orders because it's going to put someone else or another situation in further jeopardy. So I have to disobey those orders to try to actually help someone. That aspect is really interesting to me because you have that mindset of these guys were raised to be Jedi and to be, protectors of the peace and everything, and or keepers of the peace and everything. And so there are some of them that try to follow it from a, I mean, going in a more, theological Christian aspect, some of them follow in a very legalistic standpoint of obeying everything to a T, and then some of them look more so at the aspect of I have to help people.
Mhm.
Like that is where my goal is. I have to help people that are around me. And it's such an interesting thing to really kind of dive into, because at the same time, Dooku's not really like Dooku's more on the side of right in this episode. But of
yeah,
course, once again, we just watched an episode where he was about to just force choke a dude, just, I mean, just doing it, just straight up just murder a man.
yeah,
And whether the man deserved it or not is a whole. If you were unaware, if you ever hear us talk about old canon, like that's, I don't know, it's just once again, it just adds so much to that story arc for me that when you see Dooku in episode two, at least for me, especially after episode four, which we'll talk about in a second, everything that he says to Obi-Wan makes more sense to me.
yeah,
Even everything like in the sense of in the same sense as like I know you or someone else is gonna just yell at me for the comparison, but in the same sense of Darth Vader reaching out to Luke in Empire, I think Dooku is literally being sincere when he's like, "Here's the thing: if you join up with me, we could take down Darth Sidious, avenge Qui Gon Jinn, and then we can figure out how to run this ourselves." I think Dooku is being sincere when he says that. I really do. Um, Thing is that he's like, but here's the thing: the Jedi Order is not something that can exist in that in whatever form of the new galaxy that we have. The Jedi Order cannot exist the way it currently is,
Yeah.
and so that's I don't know. It adds more to the character for me. So I really like this episode. I loved all three of these episodes. These were the Ahsoka stuff's good. The Dooku stuff is some of the best stuff they've done in a while.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. It's really good. I will say this episode kind of like if you were a fan of Mace Windu, like this episode like kind of ruins that for you because like by the end of the episode you realize that like the only reason Windu is there is to collect the body of his fallen comrade so they can head back to Coruscant and he can have his spot on the High Council. Like that's all that Mace Windu is
Basically,
there
yeah,
for. Uh, and like that's rough if you like that character, but I mean that just kind of like uh because Windu in the capacity that I have always like seen this character, like he everything about him, he is the action hero of the Jedi, right?
sure,
Like that's what he is. Like with the Shatterpoint stuff, with like his whole thing where he's just like he's the Jedi to master the form of lightsaber closest to the Sith because he's super edgy and that's what he does. And like to like I mean that's why he's the one who kills Jango Fett. Like that's like the reason why he goes to like take it upon himself to square off against Palpatine.
yeah,
That's his function to the Jedi. Like he's the action hero. He's like the brawn you call in to deal with things that have to be destroyed.
sure,
And so like it was really cool in that episode to see him kind of be like contrasted with Dooku, who's very much more like he's a lot more inquisitive. He wants to figure out what's going on. There's a lot more nuance to his character that's growing as we watch these episodes. And so like it was cool to kind of see that contrast between those characters there. But yeah, it almost takes the whole idea that like oh they were friends before all this happened because it's just kind of like these two are like complete opposites. Like I'm not even sure like I buy
yeah,
that after watching this episode. Like you know, but yeah no I enjoyed it overall. Now on the last episode for Dooku and the one we'll end on before we wrap up this episode. Which, either way, everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. Hope you're
yes,
enjoying it. But the for we come to the end, and it's Kaibuck.
it's kind of like
Kaibuck. Uh, all of our audio based fans, you're gonna have fun hearing about us doing visual jokes on the show. We're slowly turning into like the last podcast on the left of Star Wars, where it's just visual bits that like 10% of their audience gets. But we get to this last episode, episode 4 of the show, last one for Count Dooku, and I have a love hate relationship with this episode, right?
really okay,
So, um, because it does one thing that I think is fantastic, and it's fantastic and it's revolutionary for how I'm going to view Count Dooku going forward.
okay,
Um, and it does one other thing that I hate that I'll get into secondly. But firstly, the thing this episode does that I love, it changes the way I think about this character by showing us that Count Dooku is like rended in half at the death of Qui Gon Jinn.
yeah,
That colors and contextualizes his character so much for me.
mm,
Like that just puts him in a whole new light. That like As you said earlier, he's not this guy who was just like, I'm tired of the Jedi. I'm like a Sith user now. It was like, that's it. It's like it was very much a gradual journey. It was very much like had a lot of factors that influenced him towards this way, and then like kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was the fact that he lost his apprentice and someone he cared very deeply about, all because the council refused to listen to him.
Yeah.
Like his like essentially his best friend died. His version of a son died
Mm.
because the council was too arrogant and ineffectual at what they were doing. That really changes that character for me. Did you feel this anyway about that aspect of episode 4?
100%. Because I mean, of course, you see, with once again, I like that it was such a gradual thing. I like that he was already doing stuff for Sidious
Mm-hmm.
when episode one happens. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I like that basically that in the background of episode one when they're on Coruscant, Qui Gon just happens to run into Dooku and talk to him about seeing the Sith Lord, and Dooku even says he's like, "Hey, I know we haven't seen them for over 1,000 years, but I don't think they're done." He's had this inkling where this dark presence was out there somewhere, and of course I half the time I imagine the Jedi High Council is like a frat party, just like happening on top of that towers. It's like, hey man, we're not worried about the Sith, like because that's basically like that's my mindset half the time because here's the thing, all right, especially within the context of this episode, thinking of the context of episode one, all right, that means that Count Dooku, let's just say that he's been on this for a year, okay? Let's say that he has been making the assumptions that a Sith presence was around for over a year, okay? And since then he has found Darth Sidious, he is working with Darth Sidious to try to bring about something different within the galaxy. I'm fairly certain he knows he's a Sith Lord. I can't remember if that is confirmed,
Mm-hmm.
when he first like
Yeah,
meets him. But I
yeah.
mean, we know that he definitely does by the time episode one is happening. Like
Mm-hmm.
the aspect, the thing is like because he even mentions Maul by name. Like presumably he has met Darth Maul at one point. Um, to think about him being like, hey, there's a Sith Lord somewhere out there. We probably need to start looking more into this. And then the Jedi Council's been like, nah, don't worry about it. Okay. And then
I
Qui Gon
don't,
Jinn.
I don't smell any smoke.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then Qui Gon Jinn comes up and is like, hey, we saw something that appeared to be a Sith Lord. And in the context with knowing the film scene, the first response from Mace Windu is a Sith Lord. Like, because having this mindset of Dooku has been telling them about this for an extended period of time, and then someone else says the same thing, and he's like, I'm not too sure about that, Qui
Mm-mm.
Gon. Like that's so insane to me. You
No.
know, going like really thinking about that going forward, like that
Oh,
scene is going to play out
yeah.
so differently for me now. I really didn't like that scene because the council kind of sucks in that scene. Okay, but and then they're like, you should go back to Naboo and find out the identity of your attacker. It's like he just said what he was. Do you really not believe him? Like that is a genuine question, Mace. And of course Yoda's just sitting there, which God, the things the prequels does to Yoda as a character. He's just like hard to see the dark side and you're just like, damn it, Yoda. Like
And then the back, and then the back of in the back of his mind, he's just like, I think I'm gonna have wings for lunch.
can can we wrap this up? Just no, like that's the one like you said, and I think I know what you're um that aspect of this in Dooku once Qui Gon is dead, having that moment where he's discussing that, even after he has erased Camino from the archives,
Mhm.
which I love that. Then he runs into his the girl who has a crush on him, Jocasta Nu.
Yeah,
I love that aspect of it. And then he walks away, and then he sees Qui Gon, and of course we get a nice little Liam Neeson cameo because it is actually him voicing him for
oh yeah.
which I know he probably got a pretty decent paycheck for that. But my actual hope is that they were just like, "Hey, Liam, are you doing anything on Thursday? Do you want to record like 6 lines?" And he was just
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, let's do it." That's what I hope. I know there was probably more to it. I'm hoping it was that like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, sure. The pendulum has swung on the Star Wars movies I was in. Let's do that.
Little Kanan,
Absolutely, yeah.
There's always
Everyone's decided they like those now. Yeah.
yes, so yeah, let's do it.
Ask me again in 10 years, everybody I decide they don't like those movies. So I don't know, but let's get this out now. um, yeah. So yeah, I do really enjoy that part. I think the part where the part where he's like in the courtyard
Stand up in
on
the tree.
Coruscant,
Yeah.
and like he's staring at the tree. I think that was like some of the more powerful imagery we've seen in Star Wars stuff.
Help me out. Have we seen? I know this is going to be such a weird question. Have we seen that tree before in Clone Wars or something?
I want.
Because
I don't recall seeing it anywhere.
because
I
I could
might
have
be wrong.
sworn we saw it. Might be in a comic. Also, it might
Okay.
have
Yeah.
been. In fact, that might be in the Qui Gon comic. I don't know if you remember when they did those like 27 solo one shots where it was each focused on a different character. That might be in the Qui Gon one. Now that I think about it.
Gotcha.
Because I feel like I have seen that before, like that
Yeah.
exact like courtyard and everything. So that's why it was such a weird scene to me. But it is a beautiful scene. But I'm sorry, I
Cool imagery.
interrupted you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's very cool. But and so yeah, I really enjoyed that part of it. Um, Palpatine is there in that episode. He's fine in the capacity that he's in
Sure.
that episode. I think he serves his role just fine. Um,
He cackles.
yeah, he cackles. He stands back and lets everybody do his work for him, which is what Palpatine does. But no, you said that you think you know what my problem is with this episode, um, and and I'm not sure you do unless we're just like really on the same page. Okay, so I'm
Okay.
gonna share this with you. I could get some hate for this opinion because at least I saw online that people were like super hype about this character when this whole thing got announced. Um, I I don't like Yaddle. I don't like Yaddle at all. I hated her in this episode. This episode would have flowed and been so much more interesting if she just hadn't been in this episode.
Damn.
Like, I don't know why she's here. I forgot. I thought that the internet was gaslighting me when I hooked her up because I do the same thing I do for every episode of the show we do. I do like the deep dives on characters I'm less familiar with. And so I did a deep dive on Yaddle, and everybody was just like, the first appearance of Yaddle is in episode 1, where she's on
Yeah.
like,
I liked seeing him.
bullshit, she is. Like, that's not a real thing. And so I look on the internet, and there's pictures of her from that scene. And I'm just like, is this a conspiracy? Are people trying to mess with me? I don't remember this character. So I didn't remember her at all. Um, and so she shows up, and like straight up, this is going to be a little bit of a rant here, okay? This will
I'm
be a
ready.
little bit of a Josh rant.
Okay.
So Yaddle shows up, and for the life of me, after having seen it, after thinking about this for a while, after thinking about like the things I want to talk about on the show with you, like for the life of me, I can't figure out the purpose that she was supposed to serve in this episode. Because like she there's a point where like Count Dooku runs into Qui-Gon Jinn, and that's a cool scene
Mm,
because like they reunite, they like share information with each other. Qui-Gon is feeling kind of like uncertain about like having shared his info about the Sith, and Dooku is just like, "No, man, I got you. Like, I understand." It's a cool. It's a cool interaction. It's a cool scene.
Mm.
Yaddle shows up, and just like it felt like every time Yaddle talked, I was like talking to like a youth pastor at like a at like a like a crappy modern evangelical church, because like she used so many words to like not say anything at all in any scene, because she was just like, our apprentices truly age before our eyes, and it's just like, yep, that's that's what Dooku just said. You're right. And then there's like this really irritating scene that had cool imagery that I wanted to like, because there's a part where like they walk their separate ways, and Yaddle goes to the part of the hallway that's like well lit of the light, and Dooku walks down the side of the hallway that's more dark and shadowy to show he's going towards the dark side. That scene would have worked a whole lot more if it had been Qui-Gon instead of Yaddle. That would have had a lot more impact if it had been that. And then when Qui-Gon dies and Yaddle goes and finds Dooku having a very personal, introspective moment, and the Inquisitor just like looks like Yaddle is just like, who you blame that came down the way it did? Because I wanted to reach into the TV and slap her and just be like, what what do you mean? Of course he does. The last time we've seen you talk to this man, he said, I don't think the council is taking Qui-Gon very seriously. And Qui-Gon goes, gets killed by the Sith that he tried to warn the council about. And Yaddle was just like, I feel like you're kind of blaming the council for Qui-Gon's death.
Of course he
Of
is.
course he is. Like, what an imperceptive person. And then we get to kind of the climax of the episode, and we see Dooku go and confront Palpatine, which, like, in itself is a cool scene, because Dooku is like Dooku is like heated. Like, we don't see throughout the entire like series of films, we don't see anyone talk to Palpatine the way he does
Yeah.
in the scene. Like, like Dooku is pissed because of Qui-Gon's death. And so like he goes in and it's heated and it's a really tense exchange. And I even got to the point where like I kind of felt like if Yaddle hadn't shown up and had just been like, I know everything now, and it's just me. Like if she hadn't like slid through and like tried to like blow the lid off this thing where there was nobody else for her to tell. If that hadn't happened, I kind of got the feeling that Dooku was like about to throw down with Palpatine right
Yeah.
there. Like he was like that affected by what happened to Qui Gon, and that would have been really cool. That would have been really cool to see them like clash with each other,
Mhm.
and like um obviously in order for like the rest of the films to work, Palpatine would have to win, and like they kind of talk him down a peg, and then that dynamic of that relationship changes as
Mhm.
well, and possibly adds on like another kind of interesting layer to their relationship. Um, but instead, we get Yaddle stepping out from behind a wall, being like, "I know your secret now." Two men with lightsabers, like, like who obviously have the powers of the dark side. And so like she does that, and at the very least you think, oh, she's probably a badass then. Like she probably is like comparable to Yoda, like to have this kind of confidence instead of just going to the council and saying, hey, Palpatine and Dooku are talking about the dark side. She must be really confident in what she can do. And then they fight, and the fight's over pretty fast. And then, like, Dooku very easily bests her with a lightsaber,
Mm.
tries to throw her out the window, and tries to crush her with, like, the thing, which would have been, like, the most hardcore death we've ever seen in Star Wars. But like, and like he tries to smash her with that. She stops it with the Force and like opens it up and jumps down, and you're just gonna be like, oh, it's gonna be like a fight with Force powers. which is what the fight between Palpatine and Yoda should have been all those years ago. We're finally gonna get that, and then you don't because she's tired. Like she's exhausted from doing that, so this is just gonna be over now. And like it's just you tell me, Jacob. Like, why is Yaddle in this episode? What does she bring to the
So,
table that would not have been more interesting if it had just been Qui Gon, Dooku, and Palpatine?
so I first and foremost, I was right. I knew what your negative thought was because
Man,
because here's the thing. All right, you are Josh is the harshest critic of Star Wars side characters. Okay, hands down. Whenever he watches this or listens to this, I hope that he will agree with me. Okay, it's fair. And for the record, there's nothing wrong with that. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong
no,
with being critical.
yeah.
Okay,
A lot of the times he has a good reason for why. Like,
yeah.
it's fair.
There's really I can't really think of one off the top of my head that I really kind of overtly disagree with, except for certain opinions about Ahsoka. But even those, I kind of agree. I'm getting off topic. Anyways,
Anyway,
with as I was watching this episode, one of my first thoughts is, well, Josh is going to hate this part because, like you said, Yaddle serves no purpose. And for the record, Bryce Dallas Howard voices Yaddle. Love Bryce Dallas Howard.
yeah,
Becoming a phenomenal director in her own
she's
right.
great. Yeah,
She did. I think now she's done 2 episodes of Mandalorian. I believe,
mhm, yeah,
maybe more. I could be wrong. I know I can confirm that she has done at least two, um, and they're great. They're great episodes.
yeah.
Um, and he was really excited to play Yaddle. He was really excited to do voice acting in this. And so when I heard she was gonna be in it, I was like, oh sweet, okay. And I thought like the scene at the tree was gonna be the last we saw of her. I was like, oh okay, that's kind of you need, because in my opinion you need a last, at that point you needed a last vestige of, is Dooku really turning,
Mhm.
like 100%. Okay, would it have been better if it was his former master?
Um,
Yes.
okay,
Okay,
cool. You know,
it would have been better in my opinion, because then you have a master attempting to comfort an apprentice who just lost his apprentice.
mhm.
So you have a dynamic there. But instead we get Yaddle, and you're right, her most of her dialogue is just her kind of just saying things basically. That doesn't really, and I did, once again, there was a part of me that like I didn't know if you would have the same reaction, but I knew that Josh would. Of, do you blame the council for his death? What? Who else would he blame? With the exception of Darth Maul, who else would
He thought they were, and
he?
that
Um. So no, I loved that. I thought like I had to laugh when when that line happened. But then we get to the finale, okay, and you're not wrong, because Dooku confronting Palpatine was a really cool moment. I was like, oh, we're gonna get something pretty awesome here.
gets done.
It just kind of fizzles out because Yaddle shows up, and Yaddle is not as good of a duelist as Yoda, and Dooku, on the other hand, is literally considered to be one of the like top 5 lightsaber duelists in the entire history of the Jedi Order, if not the greatest. Okay, I think in fact I think they have gone on record as saying that like Mace was the only one that can actually beat him regularly. Of course, then Anakin comes along and shows everybody up, but that's a whole other situation. Um, and that doesn't really go that far, and like you said, um, when he throws her out the window and then crushes her, that's when I was like, oh, okay.
Makes perfect sense that he was the one.
We just went there. We had Emilio Estevez's death from the first Mission Impossible just happen in front of our eyes. That was crazy. In a cartoon, mind you. Um, but then she comes out of but then she comes back just to be slashed by him. Like there wasn't, like, I can't remember what she says. It was something inconsequential, and then he was just like, nah, brilliant. Which, for the record, I the more I write, my own stories, and the more I start thinking about the optics of a character and what makes that character who he or she is. Um, One of the things I didn't like about Kylo Ren in the sequel trilogy, within the first two, you get this very dynamic character who is a villainous character. Okay,
project. And I'll get into
of could he be redeemed? And how much do we want to show so that he can still be redeemed? And as we've all gotten older, for some reason, we have gotten to the point where, well, if we see him actually kill someone who is good, he can't really be redeemed. Okay. Unless it is Han, which I like that since 1982. Um, you know, so instead in the comic,
take on things I thought were like weird or not.
any of Luke's apprentices, like it's all the Knights of Ren and everything, and to me it was annoying. I love Charles Soule as a writer, but to me it was annoying that they kind of took a step back on that, in my opinion. I think it makes more sense if he's actually the one who is at least a part of it somewhere, as opposed to, I think, being knocked out and then it happens.
Take her like out of the equation because
Instead, we have this moment where he is literally killing someone that he has known his entire life. Okay, so at least from that instance, that is where he serves a purpose. The problem is that, when if you want that scene and you want that purpose, in my opinion, then don't do the Mace Windu episode. Like, give Yaddle a bigger role. I know that that will probably annoy you, but at the same time, if we want that kind of emotion to be elicited, then we need to have someone who can work on an equal footing with Dooku. And I think that with the proper writing, and if they had given her more of a role in episode three, I think that would have made more sense for her. The problem is that she basically shows up, and like you and a lot of other people, you're asking, is this a new character? What is happening? Are we just tossing Yoda species everywhere now because of the success of Grogu? And no, Yaddle is in episode one. Like, I knew Yaddle was in episode one. I thought you knew that.
yes, I've come to terms with her being in episode one.
um, but to me, the thing is that you had to have it be a council member, and of the ones that are effectively killed off screen, that are no longer canon, at least you would have Yarl Poof, you'd have Yaddle, Oppo Rencesis, or I think actually just those three, because I think everyone else has an appearance somewhere in the Clone Wars. Because my first I was like, why is this not Adi Gallia or someone like that? Like, that'd be cool. And then I was like, no, because I think she's in somewhere in Clone Wars. Um, but Yaddle does die off screen. Like, she is not in episode two or three. And even in the old canon, you don't really know what happens to it. No one ever really knew what happened to Yaddle. So it actually kind of makes sense that he was like, well, Dooku kills her. We've figured out that mystery. The problem is that we don't know what kind of connection they actually had prior to our apprentices grow up before our very eyes. Yeah, Yaddle, they do,
Sure do.
they sure do. And do you blame the council for killing for his death? Well, of course I do. Just leave me alone to go to
Leave me
the one
alone.
who actually did cause all of this, you know.
Staring at this tree. I'm being sad. Leave me alone.
I mean, sad, leave me alone. Yeah, exactly. Um, so no, like, I understand where you're coming from. I really do. I still enjoyed it, but at the same time, you're not wrong. Having a scene that is basically the same as the death of Savage Opress, the Lawless. Okay, because that episode in the Clone Wars
Mm,
is very much Palpatine being like, "Hey, I know you both think you're powerful, but don't forget who I am."
mm,
And he leaves Maul alive to remember, I was the one who beat you and killed your brother in front of you. Like, that's a whole aspect. Even going into, the Darth Vader comics, it does not go well for that character. Palpatine and him do have confrontations where Palpatine has to remind him who is the master here. and which in my opinion adds so much to episode 6.
Yeah.
But having that scene here, because Dooku and him never, at least for what I have read, and I could be wrong, feel free to hit me up in the comments, let me know if this has happened before. Dooku has never had that kind of moment with Palpatine. I have always kind of viewed their relationship more as honestly equals in a lot of ways, because they are both part of the old Republic, because both of them are very old. They have seen the Republic change to what the current Jedi Order is now. Um, so to me, it makes sense that they would both be like, "Hey, let's work together on this." But I like this idea of you let Maul go too far. Like he killed someone that was actually important to me. And he killed someone that could have been a power. He even says he could have been a powerful ally for us.
Mhm.
Because that's once again, even in the Darth Plagueis book, that is a point of contention. Is Palpatine even thinks Qui Gon Jinn could be a powerful ally, because Qui Gon Jinn has made statements where it's not like in. To me, that's more interesting, where it's not so much of I want to be a dark side user, but it's more interesting where it's I don't know if I agree with everything that this institution that I have lived for my entire life. I don't know if I still agree with everything that it's currently doing. That's more interesting to me, and that's why Qui-Gon is an interesting character, and that's why Dooku is an interesting character. But then you have Yaddle.
Yeah, battle. Sure
and
is.
and Yaddle just doesn't he does not bring a whole lot to this. He is the one bad part of this. And I hate, once again, I hate that, because I really do like Bryce Dallas Howard. I really do. And
Oh
she does
yeah,
a good job.
sure.
She does a fine job of what she's given, but you know, I don't know, just for some reason, just the inclusion of Yaddle as a character did not land for me, and I know it didn't land for you.
It's rough, but I'll allow a step here and there with an
Sure.
overall really really good show.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. Now I do want to close. That's all the episodes we got. Very very sweet but very short. Um, that's all the episodes we got. I know at the beginning I said that this will be like a little bite-sized episode, um,
We're-
and we're and we're encroaching on 2 hours. Uh, that's just what happens with us when we talk about Star Wars. But I do want to close with a question. This was the first question I thought of, like as I watched the show, because like I knew that we wanted to cover it. And this is the first question that came to mind. So say hypothetically in a beautiful world,
Sure.
we get the announcement from Disney or Dave Filoni or whoever it might be. We get the announcement. Um, we get this announcement tomorrow. Hey, we're doing season 2 of Tales of the Jedi. Um, it's coming. It's dropping. It's going to focus on two new characters. Going to be a similar thing. 3 episodes each. It'll cover an arc of some kind for those characters. Um, and yeah, we're doing season 2. Um, who are your choices to be the focuses of those episodes?
Okay. So I'm gonna get this out here right now. I'm not going to say Quinlan Voss, which I know that a lot of people.
That's surprising.
I mean, that is surprising. Okay,
Surprising.
because I thought about this myself. I really did. Um, because I love this. I think this is a really interesting concept. I like that
As the council was.
it's building on the aspect of who the Jedi are, and
Mhm.
I hope that it continues to do that. And that's why for me, um, I would do 3 episodes for Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, building
Okay,
more on their relationship.
sure.
Okay. And I would actually go back further, because the thing is, it's called Tales of the Jedi. It's not called Tales of the prequel era Jedi. It's not called Tales of the Clone Wars.
Uh,
I would do something for the High Republic.
okay.
I would do like 3 episodes on like Stellan Gios or Elzar Mann, Or
Mhm.
actually, no, man, we're not worried about the skier is
Scare's
awesome.
awesome. Scare's so cool.
If you have not been reading along with any of the High Republic stuff, Skier is a Trandoshan Jedi, which means he's one of the lizard people. So like, there's a point where he loses an arm, and then it's just like slowly growing back, and it's awesome. I love Skier so much, and I would that's what I want. Yes, okay. So 3 episodes for
Good
Skier, three
choice.
episodes for Obi Wan and Qui Gon.
You know, a majority of people would have said like Elzar and Navar for High Republic, but
Sure,
no, just Skier.
just Skier.
Just,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Skier's cool. I, I do remember when I read the first trade of High Republic comics, I texted you and just like, Skier's amazing. Skier's a
Yeah,
badass.
exactly.
Skier's awesome. Yeah, those are good choices. Those are good choices for sure. Um, Obviously, I have thought about this, and I came to two names pretty fast. And like, I thought some more about it and thought about some other characters. I also had some idea for High Republic stuff that would be cool too. But at the end of the day, I came back to the original two names that came to mind when I first started thinking about it. And I don't think it'll happen. Um, well, one of them might. I don't think the other one will
I mean,
because
Skier happened, so go ahead.
Skier could happen. I believe in it. Um, Ace 2 of the High Republic has started last month. I believe they'll do a push. Um, but one, I'll almost say that like I'm positive will not happen. Because as we've talked about on this show before, Disney Star Wars has become like allergic to sequel era stuff.
Mm,
But
sure.
one of the names that I would want to see is Ray. I
Yeah.
think there is a lot of space between those films where I'm very intrigued as to what is happening with Ray. I mean, obviously, not a whole lot in between 7 and 8 because 7 ends and 8 8 begins right
Starts.
there.
Yeah.
But like, um, you've got a whole lot of time in between 8 and 9 where
I
like you can
think
do a lot of stuff.
supposedly I thought it was like 2 or 3 years. I thought it was similar to New Hope to Empire.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but yeah.
Um, I think that'd be cool. I think it would um, address a lot of like history about her character.
Mm,
I think it would help like flesh out her character a bit more because we've talked about there just isn't a lot of material out there on Ray, which is insane. But that's the first name I thought of, and inherently related to that idea
mm.
is one who I think has like a pretty good shot at showing up in one of these if they do more. Is I would love a story about the Jedi training of Leia
Oh, dude. Yeah.
because that was like the one thing I liked in Rise of Skywalker is this confirmation that Leia Organa
Mm.
like actually received like legitimate training as a Jedi. um, and I would like be fascinated to see that. I think it'd give you the opportunity to tell a Jedi story that focused more on like actual interesting like uses of the Force outside of like
Sure.
just using a lightsaber because
Mm,
obviously she had a lightsaber. Um, that came up in Rise of Skywalker, but
mm.
but but like we also saw her show a lot of other more interesting and unique kind of abilities with the Force,
Mhm.
and so you could tell that kind of story. It'd go a long way towards like establishing a bit more about like what happened to her after the events of Return of the Jedi and how she balanced like trying to run the New Republic with her Jedi stuff. And it kind of like it even have like a little thing in there for like the old canon peeps because like you read like the old school Thrawn trilogy or Jedi Academy trilogy, a big chunk of her character is trying to work with Luke and figure out the extent of her powers
Sure.
as a force user. So I think that'd be really cool. I think we're way more likely to get her than we are to get Ray,
Mm.
uh, which is a shame. But that's what I would do.
So here's the thing, honestly, I would I really like your picks for a couple of reasons.
I like yours.
Thank you. Um, I one see because I was thinking like, I was kind of with you. I was like, I'm not thinking sequel trilogy at all. But I like the fact that Leia's arc, even sticking with what is said in Rise of Skywalker, it ends because she sees where her training ends. She says her training would end with the destruction of Ben in some shape, form, or fashion. Okay,
Mm.
so to me, you could have it like her episodes end at like episode 3, and then episode 4 could literally pick up with Ray's training, where you have this kind of like passing of the torch, especially because Leia's the one that she'd be working with at that point.
Mm.
Because Luke's gone at the end of Last Jedi. So you could have this kind of passion of the torch between the two of Rey is the one who can perfect what they have been leading up towards with helping to take down the First Order. So that'd be really cool. I would do really like that. The other reason that I like your picks is because here's the thing. I have seen multiple people do reviews. I've seen multiple people on comment sections, multiple people on Reddit, YouTube, take your pick, Twitter.
Yeah,
God,
gross.
Twitter, gross. Yeah.
Gross.
Um, I have done this because it is part of my job, and hopefully, because I do this, I am the shield that allows you to never have to look at this, lovely
Mm,
viewers.
sure.
Um, Dave Filoni is consistently the like
I've ever seen in Star Wars, but
for all of Star Wars fans. Okay, like everyone will consistently say Kathleen Kennedy ruined Star Wars. You know, J.J. Abrams ruined Star Wars. Ryan Johnson, rah. But Dave Filoni's cool. Okay,
George Lucas ruined Star.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have all those comments. And then of course, and then Book of Boba Fett came out, and everyone was like, Robert Rodriguez should never touch Star Wars ever again. Which I'm not even certain I disagree with that one, but at the same time, like Dave Filoni was right there too, so I don't know what you really want, but that's not.
Ahsoka's in that show, everybody.
Yeah, Ahsoka's in that exactly. So you know, but Dave Filoni is consistently the person that people are like. Dave Filoni is the one thing holding Star Wars together. Okay, like he is Atlas holding the world of Star Wars, basically. Okay, but imagine
the
Tales of the Jedi
the
season.
hopes and dreams of all the Star Wars fans are contained in that cowboy hat.
Exactly. So imagine season 2 of Tales of the Jedi, guys. We're gonna focus on Leia's training with Luke. Oh yeah, and then the second part focuses. I heard she was gonna be in it. I was like, oh sweet. Just like, why are you doing this, Dave? Well, because we love Star Wars and because Rey's a part of Star Wars, whether you want her to be or not. Like, and like so I would absolutely love your here's the thing. I would love your picks, but I would want to be there when it was announced.
Oh yeah.
Like I would want to see, and the thing is like if it's announced at Celebration, uh, that like whatever reactions happen there, they're gonna be positive typically because the guys at Celebration are typically like just from what I've seen over the last two that they've had, watching into live streams, there's never when it comes to the announcements at least, there's never really like a negative kind of vibe. It's always very much just we love Star Wars, we want more Star Wars. Give us Star Wars, please. That's typically what it is. Um, but and even talking to anybody who has gone there, thinking of just different people who are big in the Star Wars community, Mesa Windu, who is a big guy on Twitter and TikTok who talks about just different Star Wars discourse and everything, and he's a fantastic person to follow. It's Mace Windu, so it's AH at the end of Mace. Um,
I don't have either of those things, but everybody out there who does should
he's also on
follow.
Instagram, so you
Okay,
can
there you
follow him
go.
there. But he's great, and but one of the things that he talked about is he's even said he's like I've been to a lot of different conventions. People talk about Star Wars, and there's always kind of like an air of like where I argument celebration apparently is literally just like that. It's just that it's a celebration of just everybody's pretty much happy to be there and they're happy Star Wars is happening. Um, but yeah, no, I would love to see Leia and Ray be a part of it. Um, but honestly, like the I feel about the show the same way I felt about Visions in a lot of ways of just like I don't care what happens. Just give me more of this. This was just really good.
Yeah.
You know, like even like especially I especially felt that way with Visions because of course, you know, I know a lot of that like a lot of those were like top anime studios
Mhm.
doing Star Wars stuff. I'm sorry. I love watching anime. I do not know the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
So like someone could tell me like, you know, all the different people who worked on the different episodes and I'd be like, that's really cool. I don't know who any of those people are, and I don't really follow a whole lot of the original stuff they've done, but this was a really good episode, you know, and I'm
Yeah.
happy they're doing this, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but that's kind of how I felt about it. Is I was like, I don't care what studios they get to do it. It's just if they keep giving us stuff as good as what we got in the first season of Visions, I'm cool with that. Same way with this. If they give us stuff that's just as good, let's keep rolling with it. Even if you know, I know that'd be kind of sacrilege to let him not be a part of a Star Wars animated series because we saw the reaction to Resistance. But if Dave Filoni is like, "Hey, I'm doing Ahsoka, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett season 2. I'm everywhere else, so I'm gonna have to kind of take the back seat on this,
Mhm.
executive produce, but someone else is gonna take the reins on writing." I'm cool with that
Yeah.
because that's the thing about Star Wars is it's such a collaborative process, and you have so many different voices
Mhm.
that you could absolutely do Tales of the Jedi, especially because it's an anthology. Let's get different people. Even here's the thing: I know this might be considered sacrilege since everyone loves the Clone Wars and Rebels designs. Maybe get different animation studios to do it. Whoa, whoo wee, Lord, the vapors.
Oh.
Um, but but I'd be okay with that. I'd be
Oh.
okay if we have different animators come in. I I would love to see Star Wars claymation. Let's do it. Let's get it
From the
going.
makers of Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, 100%. I would watch that so much. Oh man. But no, like that's kind of my thing is I just want them to continue. If they
Yeah.
keep giving us good quality stuff like this, I'm cool. I'm fine with it. Alive to remember.
Yeah. How about how about the announcement coming to write the Tales of the Jedi season 2 for Princess Leia is Steve Perry.
Oh God, no. Oh man. There's there's an inside joke for anyone who listened to the last episode.
Oh, dude, Josh would lose his mind.
No, I would.
uh, hey, everybody! If you are
That's
interested on being
so.
on on being on the inside of that inside joke, check out October's episode, Star Wars EU or E review, where we had our buddy Josh join us to talk about Shadows of the Empire.
Oh man.
Go check out that. Um, but yeah,
Spoiler
that is
alert! I
one.
hated that book so much.
Yeah,
Uh,
spoiler alert, it wasn't our favorite.
it was not. But anyway,
uh, yeah, I did want to ask you that to hear your picks because I was very interested. I want to ask everybody that honestly. I'm
yeah.
gonna ask everybody I know. Hey, hey, have
I don't know. Just for
have who are your picks for season 2?
sure.
Because I could go like a ton of different ways. I am very surprised that you did not have Quinlan Voss on here.
I still here's the thing. If they did Quinlan Voss, like you know, I would lose my mind. Like I love Quinlan Voss so much, and I would love to see him uh
I mean,
be
I mean, if they have Obi-Wan episodes, then he could show up.
he could
Yeah.
show showcase their well, there you go. Yeah. Young Quinlan Voss shows up with in the Obi-Wan Qui-Gon segments. There we go. Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
It's him and oh hell, what was his master's name?
Uh,
Can't remember his master's name. It
yeah,
starts
I
with a
don't
T.
know.
It's Thome or something like that, if I remember correctly. It's been a minute since I've read, as much as I love him,
Uh,
it's been a minute since I've read his stuff. Um, Okay,
surprising.
because I thought about this.
All right, man. All right, y'all. Oh, I guess we'll do our usual stuff. This is like a tangential episode
Oh yeah,
of EU review.
yeah,
Yeah.
we questions.
Hypest hypest scene from Tales of the Jedi. And is this in your Grand Canon?
Yeah. So yes, so for anyone who is new to this, since we do have many new YouTube viewers, we talk about our
Hi, YouTube.
hypest. Yes, hi YouTube. We talk about our hypest moments from whatever we're discussing, and does this fit in our grand canon, as in our personalized version of Star Wars in our own heads, basically, because we're all insane. Um,
It's true.
First off, obviously, yeah, this fits in my canon. There's no way around it. This
Yeah,
is
sure.
and to me, this is essential viewing. Maybe not like if you're new to Star Wars, I would make like you have to watch Clone Wars to understand why the Ahsoka episodes work.
Mhm.
Um, I would show the Dooku episodes to pretty much anyone who's seen the prequels, though. Like I'd be like, here you go. This ex- this explains why Christopher Lee was in this movie. Um, you know, but the Ahsoka stuff you kind of have to have seen through Clone Wars, and you don't really have to watch the Rebels to understand it. It definitely helps to know where she's going, but
Provide some flavor. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, add some flavor to it and everything. But it's
Disney, Star Wars has
for someone who has followed along this far, it's absolutely essential viewing. It's fantastic. Um, Hypest moment for me, I've got to go Ahsoka taking down the Inquisitor. I mean,
that's pretty
when
cool.
it comes to like to just a hype moment, like I mean, because it's effectively. I remember when it reminds me so much of how Obi-Wan defeats Maul in Rebels.
Mm.
Okay. Because in Rebels, it is literally you have hyped up the Darth Maul fight, and then it's literally three moves and it's done. And I remember when it first happened, I was so pissed because I was like, I wanted like a sandstorm surrounding them on Tatooine, like as they're like dueling. I wanted the big grandiose Episode 3, Mustafar fight. That's what I wanted. The
You want
older I have gotten,
the duels from Ghost of Tsushima.
yeah, yeah,
Type of.
exactly. Like that's what I wanted. Which, for the record, there's nothing wrong with that if that's a style you go for. The older I've gotten, though, I've come to appreciate the more so honestly, the more so realistic aspects of a fight. Um, when talking about we discussed Hema and Phantom
The story, it'd go a long way.
and discussing actual how actual like traditional fights would play out in a lot of ways. A lot of duels didn't last very long. Like it was typically, someone screws up and then the other guy takes the advantage and then they're done. So to see Ahsoka literally dodge two moves, grab the dude's lightsaber from him, and then take him down immediately, I loved it. I thought it was great. I just everything about that was perfect. Also, I liked that it was a plus the other aspect of that scene at the end, and I didn't discuss this part as much. The guy who turns her in, I like that it's not so much of a "I told you so, I told you this would happen" that kind of situation, as it is you made a mistake because you thought that you were doing something right.
Mhm.
I'm going to give you to people who can take care of you.
Yeah.
I really like that aspect of it. But yes, hypest moment is her just taking down that Inquisitor. Because especially that's something that you need to watch Rebels for to understand why that's so impressive. Because throughout the entire first season and a half of Rebels, more so season two because that's when the Inquisitors show up. Excuse me, but like the Inquisitors when they showed up, it was I have like
Mm.
how are our heroes going to make it out of this? They
Mm.
have barely made it out with their lives, and so for us to see Ahsoka just me, bah, which I'm sticking with those sound effects.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Felt like I was watching the show again. It was incredible.
um, but to see that moment, that was really impressive to me, and so I loved that moment. So
Yeah.
all right, so what is your hypest moment, Al? And is this in your Grand Canon?
That's a good choice. That's a good choice. Yeah. I mean, it is in my grand canon. As I've already said, episode 4 of this show will like forever change how I think about Dooku's character. Like
Sure.
it just like it completely paints him in a new light. So yeah, it's in my grand canon. Um, Hypest moment. It is really hard to argue against the Inquisitor because everything about that sequence is so cool. But there is a really cool part in two, episode 3 where the guards for the senator they've already shot and killed the senator, and they're attacking Ace Windu and Dooku.
Mhm.
And like there's a moment where Dooku is like blocking a bunch of blaster bolts and stuff. And then like the camera like shifts and like there are guards like within the forest and they're like flanking them and coming up behind them and stuff. Um, and like it happens super quick, but there's this really cool thing that I like for like a couple of reasons. But there's this really cool thing where a blaster bolt comes from behind Dooku and is coming at him, and Dooku, without looking at it, like flicks his lightsaber behind him to just like to just deflect it, and then just like immediately brings it back in front of him, and like it's so cool, and like it's also really cool because I've always thought that like the similar thing that Anakin does in like a bunch of scenes with his lightsaber, where like he flips it upside down like in front of him. Like I know that's not a practical way to hold a sword at all, but but like it always looks really cool. And like in Tuku, as you said, in various like horses and stories, like he's built up as somebody who's like incredibly talented with his style of lightsaber combat. So like to watch him be like flanked by these two teams of people with blasters, and so just like effortlessly just like handle the situation and stuff. That whole scene is really cool. And then you get Ace Windu at the end of it, who like um, who like has a guy like unarmed and he's asking him questions, and the guy's just like, "I'll never give up our secrets." And like he runs and like grabs his blaster and hoists it up and points it at Dooku or at Windu. And Windu like blocks the bolt like straight into his chest, and you're just like, you could have stopped that situation from happening in 1,000 different ways. like, like you have the force. That dude just ran 10 feet away from you, like grabbed a blaster and aimed it at you, and like you're just like, well, this guy has to die now. There's no other way to resolve this situation. It's over. But no, so like seeing that mastery he had of on the lightsaber and stuff was really cool. It's
Yeah.
really fun. But yeah, okay, y'all. That's your little extra episode this month.
Yeah.
But
We've still
before
got
we
another one. I mean, we're not done with talking about
yeah,
Star
we're
Wars.
not done with November.
We talk about our
So would you
hypes.
like to share what they have to look forward to this month?
Yeah, so later this month we are doing a Star Wars video game, which we've only done one currently. I will give you a heads up. The last time we did a Star Wars video game was the longest episode of the EU or EU review that we have done, and
It was
it was on a
by
game
far.
where we could not have as many thoughts about that game as we did. I don't think the developers of that game could talk for 2.5 hours about Star Wars Bounty Hunter. But just to give you a heads up, that might be a long one for us.
It might be a long one.
Because upcoming for you all, for your listening and presumably viewing pleasure, you will have the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order review to look
Oh
forward to
boy.
fight, and then it's literally 3 moves and it's done. A game that when we first played it, so had middling to negative thoughts in certain aspects, at least when it comes to certain characters. But
Yeah.
we're excited for the new one that's coming out. because
Yeah.
that one of my biggest complaints when I played the first one is I was like, it just
Oh,
ends. It
that's
doesn't
it.
really. That's it. Yeah. So
Hope you weren't invested in the story.
exactly. So I'm excited there is a sequel. And even replaying it, there are aspects of the game that I like. There are aspects of the game already, just having replayed it, just the first few parts of it over this past week, that I already like more 2 years later, or oh god, 3 years later. So definitely things that I want to discuss with you all. Al and I are both very excited about that one, or I know at least I am. I think Al's kind of excited about that one.
I'm excited to talk to my friend about Star Wars.
Yeah, but yeah, that's coming up later this month. Of Rebels. We've got one more, and then guys, our first year of EU or EU
First
review
year,
in the bag.
first year will be done, and we've got quite the headliner for the end of the year.
We did.
I'll leave
I'm
it
very
at that.
excited.
We've got
And a
if y'all
special
like
guest.
expanded universe Star Wars stuff, we picked one to end the first year on. That's a pretty big deal to people.
Yeah.
So
And we will have a special guest on that one, someone we're very excited to have on the podcast.
mhm.
And guys, don't count us out. We've year two already is at least halfway planned.
Year
I
two's coming.
I've already given my suggestions, and I think Al's got some stuff up his sleeves.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. But yeah. But thank you all so very much. Whether you're listening to us on Spotify or on Apple Podcast, or you're watching us on YouTube, um, thank you all so very much for hanging out with us. You guys are just the best. When it comes right down to it, as much as we love Star Wars, as much as we love different fandoms, you guys are the reason we are doing this, because these fandoms are not just for us. As we have always said, fandom is for everyone. So thank you, thank you all so very much. Hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we will see you all next time.